Welcome to edition 50 of All Killa No Filla podcast with me, Rachel Fairburn, and Kiri Pritchard-McLean. Just before we start, we do our usual disclaimer. This isn't hero worship. We do this podcast because we have a mutual interest in serial killers. As long as we are doing this podcast, it stops us from writing to them in prison.
Nice. You had your eyes closed and you were smiling for the whole of that.
Because it makes me laugh.
Oh.
I don't know why it makes me laugh. I just find it funny.
I've got a really nice cross stitch of that on my fireplace right next to us.
Just looking at it now.
Yeah, it's lovely. Thank you very much. Was it some girls in Cardiff who did that for us? They've got a company.
Yes, it was. And they made me one that said doubt it.
Yeah.
It was great.
Make sure you keep facing me, pal, because otherwise I can't hear you as well.
It's very intimate, this recording.
Yeah, it really is. Staring into each other's eyes, talking about a load of murders. So this is episode 50 and we are talking about Bible John.
Now, obviously, an unsolved one. We do have our own little a lot of people have the theories on who it might be, but we'll come to that in a bit. So Bible John was operating in Glasgow from the 22nd of February 1968 to the 31st of October 1969, and he killed 3 women who were aged between 25 and 32. He met all of his victims at Barrowland Ballroom, which I have been to, and there's several connections here, isn't there?
Yeah.
Fred West, when he lived in Glasgow, used to go to Barrowland for a bit of a dance.
And Glasgow is a fucking brilliant night out.
Oh, I love Glasgow.
I used to go up to Wanker Alert. When I was in university, we would go up to the National Review of Live Art because I wanted to waste 3 years and 20 grand of my money. And so we went up to, it was actually brilliant. We went to the National Review of Live Art, and then we would go out and we get absolutely fucking hammered, and we'd stay in this hostel. And the nightlife is so good. These huge, I can't remember what it's called, but like Art Deco building. And then we get a Chinese afterwards. It was great. And I kissed a guy who looked like Brandon Flowers.
Oh, please don't talk to me about men that look like
But his
Brandon
name was
Flowers.
Gary, so that's a mark against him.
Oh.
But he was really, really fit. And then, but he was shorter than me, and I'm 5'3.5".
Now, you see,
I didn't have heels on, though.
Not that, I think it's wrong to say that you find small men a turn off. Having said that, I've got a massive crush on Dudley Moore, and he's tiny.
Yeah, but what are you,
4'10".
So if he's smaller than
He's
you,
smaller
it's
than
medical.
me, yeah. But also, I just like really big blokes, you see. So I was a bit, I don't know. I was a bit of a, it's like, oh, he's nice. Just a little bit small, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I either like him really tall or really short, but nothing in between. Do you know what's my biggest turn off? 5'9".
5'9", average height.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing spectacular about that. Average height.
Not into it. Very tall, over 6 foot, or like 5'8" and under.
Also, when I have engaged in activity with a man who's smaller than I would...
It sounds like you're playing Boggle, and no, you're not.
I would find attractive. Always found that they have rather large...
Really?
Penises, yeah.
Is it not just that it looks in proportion, it looks large?
No, but they've always been quite... Yeah, I know, it's massive.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. I quite like that.
Well, I'm sure you do.
Oh, I do enjoy that. Thank you very much.
We've got another weird connection to this case, not just small man. In that our friend is a comedian, brilliant comedian called Stuart Mitchell. He was walking down the street one day. He is a Scottish man. Someone stopped him and went, "Excuse me, do you know you look like Bible John?" And he was like, no, it's not been said. And they were like, "Well, I'm doing a programme about Bible John. I'm doing a reconstruction. Would you come in for a casting as him?" So he got the part, and then he had to obviously like do little bits of the crime. So he met this girl while he was doing it, who's one of the victims. And then he's in a nightclub, and he tells this story on stage. It's very, very funny. So sorry to paraphrase it badly. Please go and see Stuart live if he's in your vicinity. He is chatting up this girl at the bar, and this other girl comes up to him. It was one of the women who played the victims. And as he's chatting up this girl, she leans over and she goes, "See him? He raped me on camera," and then like walks off. And he is now married to her.
Yeah, they got married last year, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, a couple of years ago now.
It was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Very sweet.
Very sweet story.
Yeah, very sweet story. But imagine that, just walking up the street. Oh, you look like Bible John. Oh, do I?
Well, I put it up on my Instagram the other day. I definitely look like Myra Hindley in
I saw the
something.
picture, actually. No, you didn't.
I categorically did. I was wearing like this 60s print dress, And then this woman had done my hair in massive, she'd done like big heated rollers in it. And it looked like, as someone else pointed out on Instagram, real 60s Corrie.
60s Corrie. I mean,
Betty when she was fit.
I look like notorious child killer Mary Bell.
You do look like Mary Bell.
You've been told that a few times, yeah?
Yeah, you've got a look of Mary Bell. I wouldn't like you near a pair of scissors. Anyway, let's crack on. So Barrowland is this...
Now, I must say this, actually. I have been to Barrowland myself.
Oh, yes.
I was thrilled when I went there, and I told several people, including my boyfriend at the time, do you know Fred West used to come here? It fell on deaf ears. Now, my boyfriend at the time was doing a big show at Barrowland, and I was very excited by it because I love Glasgow. And I was very excited to go into the Barrowland because it is, still really old-fashioned. The dressing room, it was like proper like 70s, 60s, 70s. It was brilliant. And I went to watch while he's doing his show. I was standing at the side at this barrier. Never seen a queue for a bar like it either. It was all the way around the venue.
Fucking love Glasgow.
It was amazing. He said, he was on stage and he said, oh, blah, blah, and he was doing whatever bit he was doing. He said, oh, my girlfriend, she's just over there, actually. I was pelted with pints of beer.
Nice.
Just stood there like... Right. And he's like, what on earth are you all doing? And they just weren't interested. So I just went and sat in the back room covered in beer.
That's not right, is it?
I genuinely don't know where it was. Like, it's just not a nice thing to do.
No, it's not, mate. I'm sorry that you were treated like that.
It's fine. Oh, something else
Serves you right
happened
for being a slut.
in Glasgow as well.
I'm joking, by the way.
I'm not going to tell this story. I might tell it in a bit.
What?
What I told you with Glasgow. If I tell our listeners this, I will never live this down.
I bet they can... Glasgow's a very sacred city for Rachel because it's the first time that someone entered her sacred city. Let's just say that. You can read between the lines.
Read between the lines. Anyway.
Or the holes.
Oh, God.
So...
You leave my holes out of this.
Barrowlands was like one of the big nightclubs in town, and it had a night that was specifically... It was about... Well, some say it's a secret night, but it was well known. That was for over 25s only. And basically people who were married would go and get off with each other. It was affectionately known as Grab a Granny Night, which I fucking love.
I love the fact that now somebody over 25 is classed as a granny at this point in history.
Well, so we just did, very lucky, we filmed a pilot of a musical and we had some dancers and we wanted dancers that looked like our audience, so they should look like real people, they should be varied. So we wanted some older dancers, and the producer phoned up this choreographer and was like, can you send me some older dancers? And he went, I sent you 3 over 25. We're like, that's not old.
Fuck.
We're like, we wanted people in their sort of 50s and 60s. I sent you 3 over 25.
You can see how I get depressed around my birthday.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Don't subscribe to the bullshit, mate.
Oh, no, I don't. It's just hard, innit? Anyway.
And people would go on this Grab a Granny Night, people would introduce themselves under pseudonyms. So they would be like, hello, I'm Betty Boop or whatever.
Foxy LaBamba.
Yeah, exactly. And be like, really? And you live in a tenement.
Or what would you pick as yours?
As my pseudonym? I don't know, actually, but I used to. When guys had hit on me and I didn't like them and they would push for their number, I would give them my ex-boyfriend's phone number because I knew it off by heart.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? I think I can still remember it. Yeah. Obviously, we'll beep that.
I've got to beep that out now, have I?
Yeah.
I'd pick Queenie King.
Queenie King?
Yeah.
Actually, I really like that.
Hello, I'm Queenie King, and I'm obviously from the north of England. Because I think the name Queenie is glamorous.
Oh, I do like Queenie. I like Scylla as well, Priscilla.
Oh, yeah, Priscilla's a nice name, isn't it?
Yeah. My agent Hannah is really northern. She's from Leeds. She wants to call her kid Scylla.
Oh, that'd be great,
Yeah, it'd be great.
Oh, cracking that. Now, where were we?
Oh, people used to take off their rings as well. Everyone would have like tan lines where they took off their wedding rings. I absolutely hate that. You know, when you're on a night out and someone sidles up to you, you smell them before you see them. And they're, you're at a bar and then this guy in a very crisp shirt, he's like, smile. And you're like, right, I just want this man to die immediately.
The tan line.
Yeah, and then you look down and you see the little tan line on his thing.
I must have told you this at Edinburgh a couple of years ago. I think it was about when we did the first run of the podcast. So a friend of mine, a Scouse comedian, he was having a terrible time in Edinburgh because everybody he was living with was having affairs.
Oh, yeah.
In his thing. And like, I saw him on steps one day. I said, are you all right? He went, no, telling you, wedding rings are just slipping off left, right and centre.
Oh,
and he just
God.
looked so panicked by the whole experience.
It's so stressful. Well, I find affairs incredible. I don't know how you would do it. I think it'd just be in a state of high anxiety for the whole time.
Well, I think that's why people do it, isn't it?
The thrill?
The thrill.
Have a red letter day at a racetrack instead. Go in a hot air balloon.
Oh, no.
Buy a curry from a place with a 2-star rating. Like, don't fuck other people.
Some people live for it, though, don't they?
Do they?
Some people think that's like...
Well, each to their own. You're not hurting anyone, but you almost definitely are.
It's an inherent deep down sadness that they are not dressed in themselves.
Do you reckon?
Yes.
Oh, I always think, it's a manifestation of something else. Anyway, on that cheery note, so it is actually very sad. The first victim is 25-year-old Pat Docker.
And this was in February 1968.
Pat Docker sounds like a man. It's not, it's a woman. Pat Docker.
It does, it sounds like somebody who could fix anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what it sounds like.
Pat Docker sounds like he deals scrap metal illegally. Go down Pat Docker's, see if he's got a door for a Citroen.
He can get you anything you want, Pat Docker. Anything.
Even people.
She was married, she was a mother of one. She was estranged from her husband. Now, she said to her parents that she was going out that evening, and she told them that she intended to go to the Majestic ballroom, but instead she went to the Barrowland.
Well, she did go to the Majestic, and then she was seen at some point being escorted by a man over to the Barrowlands. So they lived at 27 Langside Place, and she had a 4-year-old called Sandy.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, her husband that she's estranged from, his name is Alex. They weren't actually divorced. They had this arrangement. He was an RAF. He was a corporal down in Lincoln. And she would just obviously say that she had never been married, because she's young as well, so she's young enough not to feasibly have been married. So she goes to the Barrowlands, and then that's it. That's the last time that she is seen.
Well, her parents, when she failed to come home, her parents just assumed that she was staying with a friend.
Yeah.
Because obviously, back then, there was no mobile phones, and maybe she did it a lot. Maybe she, come back a bit later than she intended to. So I don't think they were initially worried. But as it got a bit later and later, they did start to panic a little bit. And there was an investigation. So her body was found just round the corner from her house.
Yeah, the next morning. So it was a really cold day, and a joiner was on his way to work first thing in the morning, and he sees a body on the floor near his lockup, which is on Carmichael Lane, which is only a few yards from Langside Place where she was living. And now he touched the body. He thought it was someone sleeping. Then he realised that this body is cold. They're dead. And he called the police. Now, for some reason, he thought her body, even though she's naked on her back, he thought it was a man. So he phoned the police and said, listen, this dude is dead by my lockup. And because it was a man, they assumed it was someone homeless, so they didn't bother coming. And then what happened, so this is a couple of hours goes by. This is all about 7 o'clock in the morning. And in that time, some traffic enforcers, wardens, whatever, wander past. They find the body and
put a ticket on it.
Yeah, okay, right. This is on double yellows. And they report it, and they go, it's a woman. And so the police come out immediately. Now, she'd been strangled.
Yep.
There was a rumour it was with her tights, but they actually think it was with a belt from the bruising. All her clothes are gone, and her handbag had been taken. She was on a period, which is relevant.
Yep.
It's not me just pushing an
throwing it in
endless feminist agenda. And a sanitary towel had been discarded and was nearby. She'd been beaten up very badly.
Yeah.
You couldn't make out her face anymore, really.
Well, the whole thing's awful, but it's said that somebody, when police were doing the rounds questioning people living nearby, somebody had heard somebody scream, leave me alone, twice. She'd been kicked and punched in the face, and they think that that's probably the point where she was shouting this. Rigor mortis indicated that she died very shortly after leaving Barrowland as well.
It's mad because there was in that area that night, there was a journalist who was having a massive party with loads of people coming and going, and no one saw or heard anything. It was one of the other neighbours who heard someone shouting, leave me alone. So it's just really, it must have happened so quickly.
Yeah.
And out of nowhere for none of these people to see anything, hear anything.
Now, I said that she died shortly after leaving Barrowland because what had happened is the police, while they're investigating and questioning, because they'd been told that she'd gone to the Majestic, they were focusing all their energies on there.
Yeah.
And they didn't know, fair play to them.
So they interviewed people, they were trying to get witness statements, but from the wrong nightclub.
And it was like several days later that somebody had said, no, she was in Barrowland.
In fact, a guy said, oh yeah, I danced with her at the Majestic. And then he was like, shit, that was 2 weeks ago. I've just kind of got it confused. So they concentrated loads of their investigations into just the wrong area, which, to be fair, was not their fuck up. And then they changed over. By that time, you've got a load of pissheads who don't remember what happened. Of course they don't. You know, you need to get everything as soon as you can.
Well, they assumed that she was a sex worker at first, didn't they?
Yeah, and then I think it was some local, she was in the morgue, and something to do with, I think someone from the local ambulance service was like, I feel like I recognise her. And some nurses came down and were like, no, I think she works at the hospital, but they couldn't see because her face was so badly bruised, because she was a nurse, wasn't she?
Yeah.
And then her parents called when it came out in the papers. It made the evening paper, but it wasn't a front page thing. It was just like, oh, a woman has been found dead. So they saw this, contacted the police, and then went and identified her.
It's just sad, isn't it?
Oh my God, especially because she'd been battered. Like, it's going to be horrific enough to identify the body of your child and them found in those circumstances, and then that you can clearly see that they suffered so much is fucking horrific.
I've definitely told the story about my friend having to go missing and his parents having to identify a body that wasn't him, haven't I?
No.
Haven't I told it?
Oh my God.
I may well have told this on the podcast. So, a chap that I was friends with many years ago, bit of a wild child, shall we say.
I'm just going to move.
He was in a band and stuff. He lovely lad. And he kind of used to go off the rails every so often. So this particular time, he went completely off the rails, didn't contact his girlfriend or his family or any of his mates for about a week. But what he was actually doing was he was just in a hotel room in Chadderton, which is depressing enough, just doing loads of drugs, right, and getting off his nut on his own, as far as we know. So his family are obviously worried. His girlfriend's, they contacted the police. The police contacted his family, and it was his girlfriend that had to do this as well. So they said, look, we found a body. It could be him. You need to come and identify it. So they're obviously worried sick. They go in to identify his body, and they're like, oh, thank fuck it's not him, kind of thing. But also we've just seen a young man's dead body, and we're actually very distressed by this, and we still haven't found him. Anyway, he just saunters home a couple of days later, like, hiya. And they're like, where the fuck have you been?
We've just seen a dead body because of you.
And I don't think he understood.
Do you get any compensation for seeing an incorrect dead body?
Absolutely not.
No, of course not.
Can you imagine?
People would do that for a living, wouldn't they?
Can you imagine? I'm sure I might have told that before. Anyway,
I don't think you have.
They've split up now. Well, they split up soon after that.
Yeah, that'll do it, won't it?
They didn't last, that relationship. So
the parents identified. Now 18 months goes by, and this is just seen as like a random thing that happened, and she's sort of forgotten about, poor Pat. And then there's another murder.
Yeah.
So it's Jemima MacDonald. She's a mother of 3. She's 32 years old.
Yeah. This was Saturday, the 16th of August, 1969. And she would go to Barrowland a lot. So her sister Margaret has the arrangement that Margaret would look after her children while she went out and had a good time. So she was seen in Barrowland around midnight. Several people had seen her with a young man who was very well dressed, well spoken. They said he was aged between 25 and 35, between 6 foot and 6'2". He had short, dark brown hair with fair streaks in it, and he had a Glaswegian accent. They said occasionally this man inserted biblical quotes into conversation.
What a cracker, which is where the name Bible Chum comes from, by the way, is that he would quote the Bible when he was talking to women. So he was seen, she was dancing most of the night with this tall, well-dressed man. He had fair hair and a blue suit. And then that's it, and she just goes missing. She
was seen walking home, somebody saw her about 12:40 a.m. Now, obviously she's not gone home, so Margaret the next day starts to worry that she wasn't there. In the meantime, while Margaret's worrying, she's hearing all these rumours in her local area that some local children keep going into a tenement building that's derelict on a street called McKeith Street, and they're referring to the body that they keep seeing. So like, oh, the body. Oh, we've just been to see the body. which you told me what Stand By Me was originally called.
Yeah, Stand By Me was... Yeah, I think the book is called maybe The Body.
And Elle Macpherson.
Yeah, they're like, Elle Macpherson's in a tenement in Glasgow.
So bearing in mind, this poor woman has been last seen on Saturday night, and obviously Margaret's gone out of her mind with worry about her sister because she's not heard from her.
This is so dark.
It's horrible, this. So Monday morning, after a weekend of worry, she decided to go into the tenement building.
Well, she goes to the kids, will you take me to see this body? So they're like, yeah. Which is so dark that is like an activity for children to do.
Yeah, and the fact that nobody's listening to these kids and taking it serious.
No.
So it's like, yeah, okay.
They just think they're little bullshitters or they're too busy or whatever. So they take the sister up and then she finds her sister's body. And she's been battered. So she finds her sister after a weekend of worry, knowing that she's been lying in this building with a load of kids staring at her, naked. It's awful.
It's horrible.
She'd been strangled with her tights. She was also on the rag. Her handbag's gone. It's so similar to Pat Docker.
They worked out that she'd been killed 30 hours before she was discovered as well. And although she was fully clothed, a lot of her clothing had been torn. And she'd been sexually assaulted as well. And police had very little information.
I thought she was naked.
No, it said she was clothed, but her clothing was ripped.
Oh, that's it, yeah.
So the police had very little information yet again, and the only thing they had was that somebody had heard a woman screaming on the Saturday night, Sunday morning kind of time, and that's all they had. Now, they didn't even link the two murders at this time.
To be fair, it's been ages apart, and you wouldn't necessarily... Finding a woman strangled is maybe not going to do it.
And although they did recognise the similarities, they just didn't think that there was a definite link, apart from the fact that their handbags had been stolen. That's what they were was thinking was the big link. So this was the very first time ever in Scotland that a composite drawing had been used. And so they spoke to people in Barrowland, and they sort of got a picture of who they thought this person was. And they distributed it quite considerably. It was in papers, it was on television.
It was known as Scotland's most famous portrait, which fucking Mary Queen of Scots must be like, really? Unbelievable.
Certainly puts Monarch of the Glen down.
Love that programme, very easy watching. Just to really fancy the main guy as well.
Oh, what's his name?
And the little one in a kilt that looks like Ewan McGregor.
Oh, no. What's his name?
You don't like him, do you?
I can't stand him.
He's got no taste.
He's awful. I can't remember his name.
This isn't gold podcasting.
No, it's not. I was just thinking, it's going to bug me now. You know what'll happen? At about 10 o'clock tonight, I'll just suddenly scream out someone's name. I mean, that'd be nice for a change. So, what they started doing as well, they were putting undercover policemen, probably men, in Barrowland. Men and women.
It was Scotland's biggest manhunt, this. Once they were like, right, we need to find someone. It's happening in this nightclub, and they know loads of people go to these like nightclubs. So yeah, they what they do is they'd get these men and women to dress up like they're on a night out, and then they go and be like, hey, do you come here often? Were you here on February 22nd in 1968?
Act natural.
And apparently loads of people cotton on really easily, and they were like, oh, you can tell the police who are, it's the ones who can't dance.
Oh, I bet they were so uncomfortable going into that environment, like, oh, God.
Imagine being that. Walking the beat all day and then having to, like... It's weird, isn't it, as well, because like, you'll be used to seeing your colleagues in uniform and then, like, seeing people... I find it really weird when you're used to seeing people... You know, like, when you see your teacher in the supermarket and you're like, ugh, because you're like, you shouldn't be here. It's like seeing people out of context.
This is not what you do.
Yeah, especially if they're in their own clothes. I'm like, I feel sick now. What have you done to me?
Oh, as if you've got jogging bottoms.
Yeah, exactly. Why have you got a Liverpool kit on? You're an adult.
Third murder. This was the 31st of October 1969.
Halloween. I find it weird when you murder people on Halloween.
Yeah. Also, I also
think... It just feels hack.
It does.
Cliche.
But also I think, imagine if something bad happened to you on Halloween, you were just shouting in the street or something like that, and people would just be like, oh, it's just Halloween.
Yeah, running, covered in blood. People are like, bloody hell, it's getting like America over here. Which we're very excited about going to.
We very much are. So 31st of October 1969. This was in Scottstown in Glasgow. Now, this was 29-year-old Helen Puttock. She was found... We'll get to how she was found first. She was found behind a tenement building. Her body was found in her own back garden in Earl Street. Now, she had grass stains on her, indicating that she struggled so much with her attacker. They think that she tried to scale a railway embankment as well to try and get away from him.
Jeez.
She had a bite mark on her right thigh. She was also menstruating. He'd placed her sanitary towel beneath her left arm as well. Now, Helen had been out with her sister Jean, and they'd met two men.
Also, her handbag had gone.
Her handbag had gone.
This one is different to those. There was semen found at the scene. So that's the first time they've got like real DNA evidence that they could use.
So Helen had been out with her sister Jean, and they'd met two men called John. The first John that they met was quite a nice chap by all accounts. He was well spoken. He was a slater, and they couldn't remember his surname. They referred to him as Castle Milk John because that's where he was from.
Makes me feel sick.
It's horrible, isn't it? Why is Castle Milk such a horrible?
I've got I've got a phobia of certain types of milk, and Castle Milk is making me feel sick. But there's one in particular that's really bad. That's a pet that you have that's not a dog. The other one, I can't. If I read that or I get near it in a supermarket or I see an advert from it, it gives me the gip. I don't want to think about it actually. I'll just feel sick.
It's pretty gross.
It's disgusting.
Ugh.
It's making me feel really sick. And earlier my fellow was downstairs and he was like, "What about dog's milk?" And I was like, "Well, that just sounds like spunk, doesn't it?"
Yeah.
Milking a dog, it's got to be semen, but this stuff.
He said rat's milk as well.
Yeah, rat's milk.
This has just made me think of this. I read one of the most disgusting things I've ever read in my life. So, it was in a shit magazine. I was on a train. This woman wanted to lose weight. She went to see her personal trainer, and he said, "Hey, have you ever tried drinking breast milk?" And she was like, "Not since I was a baby." And he said, "Honestly, buy breast milk off the internet." So women are obviously donating breast milk. And I know women do it.
They're selling it.
Yeah, selling it. And I know women do it when other women are struggling to breastfeed. But I'm sorry, this woman was buying breast milk and she uses it instead of like animal or whatever milk. And
what, in a tea and stuff?
Tea, cornflakes.
It's meant to be horrible. It's meant to taste horrible.
And she swears that it's made her lose like 3 stone. I'm sorry.
It just hasn't.
How
much milk was she drinking before that was making her put on 3 stone?
I couldn't drink.
It's full of good stuff.
I'm sure.
It's meant to taste fucking rank.
But it's for babies.
Yeah.
It's not for...
Also, if you're buying it off the internet on whatever dark web
That's
website,
what I'm...
it's not screened, is it?
No, exactly. That's what I'm thinking. Like, you don't know what... I just... That's knocking me sick.
They did one where they had to... It was like 2 weeks where there was this shop that was like, we sell loads of mad ice cream flavours, and they made one out of breast milk. A pun on Lady Gaga, I think. 'Cause, like, Gaga...
Who's buying this?
Well, not many people, and people are like, this is a health problem to screen everything and treat it differently and da. Because, like, milk is pasteurised, isn't it? We know it's got no stuff in it, and obviously if you have any, like, diseases that can spread through fluid, like...
I mean, having said that, I have, I'm not averse to people's bodily fluids, but not...
You surprised me.
It's just something about drinking someone's milk.
Would you have... I'm not even going to say it.
Go on.
Would you have semen made... ice cream made out of semen?
Absolutely not.
If I don't even... someone you knew?
No, I don't even want it when I've had to come into contact with it. No one wants to have that, do they? It's not like, oh, fucking delicious. Fine.
Come on, let's do an omelette.
Yeah, I've not had this for ages. No, absolutely
not.
not.
I really fancy for tea tonight. I haven't had in ages. Spunk.
Right, come on, go milk yourself. Let's make an omelette. That's disgusting.
Do you remember those adverts that used to be people looking in a fridge and it was like, it was lion's eggs and it was like, you can make a meal out of everything. Just imagine just some eggs and be like, guess we'll just cracking one off into a bowl of eggs then.
Oh God, it's disgusting. Oh.
So they met this Castle Milk John. And then the other one they called Bible John because he was very intense and would quote bits of the Bible in conversation. Mm-hmm. But he was doing stuff that, like, an eye for an eye. He wasn't doing B-sides. Yeah. He was doing stuff we all know.
Yeah, he was straight in with the classics, as it were.
And he seems like a fucking pious cunt as well because they were like, what do you do for hogmanay? which is new. Well, I'm sure you guys all know this around the world. It's New Year's Eve in Scotland.
Huge event.
Huge event. And he goes, I don't drink on Hogmanay, I pray. Which sounds like some pastor trying to be cool.
Yeah, it
He's
does.
like, actually, I find prayer more intense than an orgasm, but that's just me.
Ugh. Ugh.
So they're in the pub, and then they go to the Barrowlands, which I don't know why he's there, because at some point in the night he refers to dance halls as, what did he say they were?
Adulterous dens of iniquity.
Which sounds fucking
Which
cool.
sounds amazing, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's 20 quid in, and you go to an adulterous den of iniquity. All right, do I have to bring my own towel? So they go to this Barrowlands, and they're there with Castlemilk John. He leaves early, doesn't he?
Yeah, Castlemilk John goes, he decides he's going to just get the bus home. And he leaves Jean, Helen and Bible John. They get a taxi.
They keep referring to the reports as a trio.
At this point. Do you remember the Biscuits trio?
Oh, they were nice.
They were nice, weren't they? Love the Biscuits. Yeah, they're referred to as a trio at this juncture.
Did it go trio?
That's the one, yeah.
I want a trio. And I want one now.
Terrible manners in that song. Please May I Have a Trio. Would have been better.
Yeah.
Please May I Have a Trio. Thank you. So it's a 20-minute journey that they're going on in the taxi. Which I think is a
decent
long
fare, that, isn't it?
That's a long way.
They split the Uber.
Before,
Do you ever pool Ubers?
I've been in one with Will Duggan.
I pool all the time, and I think that might be a stupid thing to do.
I think it's a strange thing to do. I wouldn't do it.
I nearly never share it with anyone. And when I do, they are staring at their phone like I am. And usually one of us is in the back and one of us is in the front.
Do you say hello?
Yeah, I just usually let on.
All right.
Sometimes they talk. Sometimes, if they talk, I always end up knowing someone they know.
Oh.
Yeah, so twice. Once was a guy who was a journalist who was flying off to Berlin, and he knew someone that I know through comedy. Well, in fact, both times. One was someone who knew Rhys James, the comedian, and another one was someone who knew a promoter in Manchester.
Great. That's a...
it was weird. So when they talk, I end up knowing someone that they know, but generally they don't talk. Once I've pulled it with just a bag of salad that someone was delivering.
Seriously?
Yeah. I was like, "What's this? Someone's deaf listening." He was like, "No, that's who you're pooling with." I was like, "Okay." Well, it's like a courier, isn't it? It's a cheap courier service.
That's fucking...
I got out before the bag of salad did, so I didn't get to see who it was being
Imagine it
delivered
with
to.
its seatbelt on.
Bing, bing.
Oh,
but you need to
that's
pop a seatbelt on. It's a big bag of salad.
Why have you never told me that before? That's
Because it literally happened 2 days ago, that's why.
The wheel's gone mad.
So they were leaving the trio.
Who initially, before being referred to as a trio, were referred to as a quartet.
It's weird, isn't it? That in all the reports they're like the quartet. Like they're going bum 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 bum. They'd as they were getting their coats from the cloakroom, Bible John was banging on about how much he disapproved of married women visiting Barrowlands. You're in the wrong fucking place, mate.
I can see why Castlemilk John went home. That's what I was saying at this point. I must have told this before. Like, you know, you get your cloak, you go to the cloakroom in a nightclub. Years ago, we were on 42nd Street in Manchester. My friend Chris.
Like 42s.
It's all right, isn't it? I won't go in now. I'd be right out of place.
I went recently, and I have never felt so old in all my
What
life.
do you got 42s for?
Well, I mean, it was like 2 years ago now, but I still felt old.
Oh yeah, I couldn't do it now. So he comes up to me with this like bemused look on his face, and he went, I went, "What's wrong?" And the cloakroom had gone up from 50p to £1 within a week, and he went, "I don't believe it, mate. It's £1 a cloak." Someone's actually putting their cloak. It's £1 a cloak.
Do you want to hear my business idea?
Go on.
You know when you go like Sainsbury's and they valet your car while you're in there? So my idea is that you pay in, and you can pay £1 to put your cloak in, or you can pay like 15 quid, and while you're in the nightclub, they're going to dry clean your coat for you.
That's not bad.
Because I never have the time to go out and I'm like, oh, I'm going to wear it now, and it's always just filthy. But imagine getting a clean coat. That'd be fucking great, wouldn't it?
What about shoes rehealed?
Well, no, because you you need your shoes when you're in the nightclub. It's not a mosque. You don't take them off at the door.
You can take... You've got a spare pair of shoes.
Well, I do, because I'm a woman, so you've got to have a pair of flats so you can run from your rapist on the way home.
You've taken 2 pairs of shoes.
But you want your high shoes on in the club? No, actually, you start taking them off when you dance.
You can't be standing in your stocking feet.
Stocking feet? What year's all this happening in?
I'm a nan kid, I give me a break.
Rubbing gravy on your legs.
Did I say? So in Edinburgh one night, probably the only really late night that I had, which was the penultimate night, your shoes you can't get comfortable in your shoes even though you've been wearing them every single day. I was like, my feet are fucking killing me. I was like, and I was coming back to the flat. I was like, I'm going back now, and I took my shoes off because my feet were so sore, and then tried to walk along the pavement for 10 minutes, and then realised I was like, this is the worst idea I've ever had. It's taken me like double the amount of time to get home. And I think I just stood in glass and all kinds of shit. I was like, what am I doing? And then
that's when you see that, like, that's Last Chance Saloon, isn't it? When you see girls in bare feet in like city centre streets in Manchester, quite clean and stuff, but like definitely during the festival in Edinburgh, there's fucking shit and sick and flyers and broken glass everywhere. And just the thought of going down London streets are fucking filthy as well. Just going down the streets with all that. It's like something someone would do to raise money for charity. I'm going to walk down a high street with no shoes on at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm raising money for Macmillan.
Have you ever seen that hippie guy? I've not seen him for years, actually. He used to always be in Manchester city centre. He always used to wear, like, proper 70s clothes, like, really cool, but he used to wear no shoes and socks. And he would just wander around, like, in his bare feet.
I think your feet get acclimatised to it, don't they? Because, like, Tim Renko, our friend, he's a fucking brilliant comedian. He doesn't really wear shoes, or doesn't wear them very often.
Oh, no, he doesn't.
And his feet are fucking filthy. And, like, they're obviously, like, not that he gives a shit. His feet are kind of toughened up now, I think.
Yeah. It's commitment to it, though, isn't it?
Yeah, and they're having hobbit feet, because they're never going to look nice again, are they? Because you basically got to turn them into a pair of leather shoes. They're always on your feet.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's made me feel icky, that. So while also, there's a kick-off outside, right? So the Sig machine, one of them has bought something from the Sig machine and it's not delivered, which, I'll be honest, is the most infuriating thing in the world. When you put something in a vending machine, oh my God, when it untwists and it doesn't fall down. And I'm like, oh, okay, so this is when I go postal.
Yeah.
Because that bag of hula hoops is holding out on me. Oh, but in reverse, the best feeling is when that's happened to someone else. You buy the hula hoops behind it and you get both bags. I swear to God, that's fucking brilliant.
It's a treat, isn't it? I went to Blackpool not so long ago.
Shocking.
I know. I was on a grab.
I'm going on Tuesday. I'm going to see the League of Gentlemen.
Oh, are you? In Blackpool? At the Winter Gardens?
At the Winter Gardens.
Oh, that would be great, that.
That'd be fucking
brilliant. I like the Winter Gardens. I went to see the Killers at the Winter Gardens. So I was on a grabbing machine, trying to get a thing. And I was like, it was a Jurassic Park toy.
Do we all know what grabbers are? Australians? Because I know you bollocked us for always talking about Americans.
Oh, yeah. So it's when you go to the fun fair or wherever, theme park.
Fun fair, which is definitely a fucking misnomer.
And you get the machine, you put like 20p whatever in, and it goes do and goes across, and then it goes down to grab a toy.
You are acting it out, and this is a podcast. It's a metal claw that's very weak,
and then
with an articulated arm that you control,
and it strokes the toy, doesn't it?
Yeah, basically. It has all the grip of an arthritic.
In fact, I might have it with me. I've got it.
What? You've got the grabber with you.
All right. So on this machine, I was like, and I was like, not getting anywhere. It did grab something. It grabbed this. One of the balls that's like surrounding the toys.
Why are you carrying it around with you?
I don't know. It just went do and dropped into the thing. I think I've kept it as some sort of good luck thing because the other day I found a £5 in the street.
Oh, that's good.
But I also fell over on the same day.
Right, well that's karma.
But that was before the £5.
Oh, okay. I don't know how that works. Anyway, so they're kicking off with the Sig machine. And the bouncers are like, get the fuck out, stop, because they start punching it. So they all get kicked out and they head off.
Now, I love it when people punch machines.
I love it when people punch walls, machines, anything like that. Anything where I know you're going to hurt so much for that stupid decision. our mate in university punched a hole through our living room wall one night. Joseph Peake. Yeah, he's now the father of 2 and a nanotechnologist. He was a great guy. But in some fit of rage, he punched through the wall, and we were like, for fuck's sake, we're going to lose our deposit now. But we didn't do anything with it. So there was just this one massive poster of Pete Doherty on the wall of our living room at like a jaunty, weird angle. And that they never checked behind it, like fucking, what's it called, that thing where they chisel behind it, Shawshank Redemption. And he to be fair, he filled it in. Oh, excuse me. Not sexually, he didn't fuck the hole, but I mean, people experiment at uni, don't they? He did it all with polyfiller at the end. None of us got charged, so it's all fine. So the last sighting of them all, well, actually, the last sighting of Castle Milk John is at 1:30 a.m, and they see this guy who's smartly dressed but dishevelled, heddling. Oh, no, this isn't. So Castle Milk John, I think, goes and gets a bus.
Yeah, he just goes home, yeah.
So
as I say, probably after Bible John's twatting on about the Bible and being an absolute, what's the word?
Prick.
What do they call it? When someone's boring.
Bore?
No, there's a word. Buzzkill.
Killjoy.
Killjoy.
Yeah.
Buzzkill.
Any of those things.
Any of those.
So they get in a taxi. And he falls out. They get kicked out of the taxi because they're arguing about the way home or the fare.
Yeah, so the 2 women know the way that they're going. The taxi driver says, no, this is the best way to go.
Of course he fucking does.
Which,
like when you look at your Uber when you've been pissed and it's taking you, you're like, that is not the quickest way to go to my house because it's going via Birmingham and I live in Manchester.
Infuriating. So they have an argument. They get out of the taxi. Jean goes one way, doesn't she? She decides to go towards her house. And Helen heads towards hers with Bible John.
And then that's it. She's not seen again. So the last sighting of Bible John, or what they think was Bible John, is at 1:30 a.m. They see this guy who was dressed smartly, quite dishevelled, heading for the Clyde ferry. And then obviously Pat's body is found, and they're like, okay, there's definitely a serial killer.
Helen's body.
Helen's body, I'm so sorry. They link it to Jemima's murder and Pat's now. There's a fucking huge, the manhunt steps up, and there's loads of fear. Everyone's just terrified because it's a big party city, Glasgow, even now. Suddenly, Barrowland's no fucker is going there. No young women are going there. And they didn't go out, and if they did, they certainly didn't go home alone with men, which is the whole point of going out, if you ask me. So they took 50,000 witness statements, the police. There was 1,000 suspects. And there was over 100 detectives working on this case. So it was huge, and they really fucking stepped up, to be fair.
And it was 5,000 people were questioned as well.
Yeah.
That is a lot, innit?
Yeah, and men who looked like Bible John, who were found, clear, were given cards from the police that said, I'm not Bible John. Which also, if you can fake a passport, you can definitely fake a card with, I am not Bible John on it.
I'm not Bible John.
It's like, I think anything like that, I'd be like, well, you're definitely him. If you're showing me it straight away, you're definitely him.
It sounds like a badge that an improv troupe would have, in Edinburgh. Let's not talk about Edinburgh improv troupes.
Basically, he is never found, even though there's an extensive search, loads of witnesses, they've got DNA.
Jean attended over 300 identity parades.
How fucking stressful for that poor woman who's had her sister murdered.
Yep. So there was a lot of assumptions made. They assumed that maybe he died. They assumed that maybe he was in prison for an unconnected crime. They thought that he might have moved. They thought he might have been incarcerated in an institution. All kinds of things.
Yeah, fairly recently, in the last few years, they even exhumed a body of a suspect to compare it to the DNA. So they exhumed the body of John Irvin McInnes. They wanted to test his DNA. He was a former squaddie in the Scots Guards. He took his own life in 1980 when he was 41. So they tested it and it was found, just came back inconclusive. And they obviously issued an apology to his family for putting him through all the stress. That must be awful. You have someone in your family who took their own life, and then they're going to dig him up and accuse him of being a murderer and a rapist.
The thing is, they assumed it might have been somebody in the forces as well, didn't they?
Yeah, so that's where the squaddie thing comes in. So the DNA samples are sort of knocking around. Now, they have tried to link him to another murderer who we are going to do a podcast on and release it in the next week so you can compare and contrast.
So we'll just say this as well. John White, this man called John White, we don't know his real name, he'd been seen arguing with a woman in Barrowland I mean, if that's going to make you a bloody murderer, I mean, they might have...
What, a man arguing with a woman late at night in a nightclub in Glasgow? Well, that's an unusual instance, isn't it?
You might have arguments. I was with my pals at bloody nightclubs. That's why I got to nightclubs.
You told me that story of when you were pissed about... Have you told this before about the burger when you lock yourself in the bathroom?
Oh!
That's funny.
Oh, no, it wasn't... the burger's a different one.
Is it?
Yeah, so... apparently, many years ago, I was going to be proposed to, and I didn't know. And it never happened because we had an argument about a burger.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Because you were pissed?
Burger toppings, yeah. Yep, burger toppings. Lucky escape, though. And I still love burgers to this day.
What topping did you argue over?
I can't remember. I remember saying I wanted, like... It was something like bacon and blue cheese or something. And the person I was with was like, no, I think you should have this. And I was like, don't you tell me what I can have on my burger. And it just took a turn. Just took a turn. And then we had an argument once in... we went on holiday to Antigua. Lovely place. And we had an argument on a balcony. It was my fault with hindsight. And I hid in a bathroom because...
Didn't you first try and push him off the balcony?
I might have tried to push him off the balcony.
Isn't he like 6 foot?
Yeah, he's 6'2", 6'3", something like that. And massive. And I was like, oh yeah. And I just sort of pushed him. He went, oh, I want to do this. He went, oh yeah. And sort of had a moment of like, I'm going to push you off the balcony. And then I ran and hid in the bathroom. And about an hour later he went, have you quite finished? I went, yeah, I have. He went, right, come out. And then we just watched a film. Hiding in the bathroom. Now that sounds worse than it is.
Yeah, it sounds very Oscar Pistorius.
If you would have known our relationship, you would have known that this was totally normal. It was non-violent.
But what's quite difficult about this DNA is it was stored quite badly. It deteriorated, so they haven't. They wanted to test it recently, and they couldn't. So there was DNA samples that were taken from a crime scene in Glasgow in 2003, and they were an 80% match.
Wow.
So they think that this person was still at large, and he has been linked, and a lot of people think it is the serial killer Peter Tobin, who we are going to be talking about. Hopefully by next week we'll get your podcast out.
Yeah. It makes sense, doesn't it?
There's certain things that would make you think it was him. He moved from Glasgow, didn't he? Mm-hmm. And he met his missus at the Barrowland.
Yeah, 1969. He met his wife there. He moved to Brighton, lived there for 20 years. His ex-wives have all said that he used to kick off with them a lot, especially around the time that they were menstruating.
Which is a common thing with all these women that they've been on the rag.
Yeah.
What's it called? Not the cartoon, but the picture of him that the police released. That looks like Peter Tobin when he's young. He was very religious.
Yeah.
And they also, the women who thought they met Bible John in Barrowlands would point Tobin out as being like, that's him, that's the guy. And Tobin's murders, which obviously we'll talk about in a week's time, he had killed a load of people in his 60s, and he was very experienced. He was very, he had a solid, MO, and people are like, you just can't start suddenly killing people in your 60s and have a refined method and behave like an experienced killer. He must have been killing people before.
I think as well, so I mean, because obviously he actually murdered 2 girls and buried them in his garden. I think he must... In your 60s, you might think you haven't got the same physical strength that you had when you were younger, obviously. And I think that obviously he was experienced in this, and that's why he knew exactly what he was doing and knew how he could get away with it. I mean, all signs do point to him, really. A lot of women came forward, didn't they, in 2006?
Not all signs, though.
A lot of them. But
the main one for me is that Jean, who, don't forget, spent all night with this man.
Yeah.
This is the sister of... Helen spent all night with this man, got a taxi with this man, an argument with this man, all that kind of stuff. She was like, it's not him.
She's adamant that it's not him.
Well, but it's really difficult with Jean because when they were kicking off with the Sig machine, I didn't finish that story, did I? But the bouncers like, oh, we remember that guy. He was short with dark hair, and basically described someone who looked like Fred West. And the police took their description over Jean's because they're like, oh, well, she was pissed. And Jean was like, I'm telling you, he was tall with fair hair. So they went down the wrong road for a bit. But Jean is like, I know what he looked like. Mm-hmm. So she's pretty adamant.
Well, it's interesting because I think as well. So the Fred West connection. The Yorkshire Ripper spent a lot of time in Glasgow. He had a second girlfriend in Glasgow.
Yes.
Peter Sutcliffe. But the timelines aren't.
No.
I think right, and also he'd have to have done a Glaswegian accent all night, and I don't think he was.
No.
I don't think he was well trained.
Mimic.
Yeah, he wasn't a gifted mimic. I don't think he was well trained in the world of entertainment. So yeah, but it's so weird how so many things go through Glasgow as well. Sort of when you think about it, Glasgow and Manchester have had some. Ian Brader, Fred West lived there, Yorkshire Ripper spent time there, Peter Tobin. When you think about Manchester, Moore's Murders, Ian Brady again, Shipman, Trevor Hardy, Yorkshire Ripper committing crimes here.
Yeah, he did it in Manchester as well, yeah.
I just think that, what is it that about...
Well, they're busy cities, aren't they?
Well, I know, yeah, but I mean...
But they also aren't cities that you pass through, because Manchester's in the northwest, so it's out on a bit, and Glasgow's fucking high up in it. But I don't know what it is.
Why doesn't Liverpool have it?
Yeah, Liverpool doesn't have
Liverpool doesn't really have that kind of serial killer. I mean, I don't know, there's been some awful crimes there, but there's just something I find really fascinating about Manchester and Glasgow as a place where...
Like a bit of a hotbed for it. That's really interesting, yeah, because like Birmingham is actually the second city, isn't it? It's the second biggest behind London.
Huge.
And it doesn't have loads of stuff.
No.
Interesting.
It is interesting.
So, that is Bible John. Now, normally we hate doing ones that aren't identified because for me, the fascinating bit is like their childhood, really, and you hate the trials, and there's no trial.
Perfect. I mean, not for me doing a podcast, terrible for everyone involved.
But I think Bible John is fucking fascinating.
Yeah, I think so.
And it's like this huge thing that hangs over Scotland and that like it was never found. They don't know who it is. So yeah, it's a big part of the folklore. I think we might do a Scottish one when we do the live shows in America, which are next week. So exciting. I think we might do Burke and Hare because I loved doing Burke and Hare. I was fascinated by it.
Yeah, I think we should do Burke and Hare. That would be a good one to do.
I think it's great. So that'll be one of the ones that we do, and then we're going to try and think. I think Rodney Alcala, maybe we should do.
Yeah, we can do him again, yeah.
Alcala.
He'd be a good one to do.
Yeah, although I just don't want to do it if there's anyone in that's like... That's my fear, is that we do a live show and someone's like, ugh, oh God, I hope you wouldn't do this one. But you'd do a bit of Googling, wouldn't you? Probably would go to the podcast.
We can only do what we do.
That's exactly the kind of caring attitude I expect from you, Rachel Fairburn.
Which is what I've said. That's my go-to when I have a gig where I die on my ass, which doesn't happen that often. But when it does happen, I go, look, I can only do what I do. And 9 times out of 10 they go, all right, fair enough.
Yeah, that's fair.
I can only do what I do.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
A little tiny thing. It makes a massive difference if you subscribe to us or give us a nice review. Mm-hmm. Because I think what we do is decent and hopefully you agree. So if you haven't, it shouldn't take very long to just give us some nice ratings and maybe subscribe to us, because we're going to try and pump out quite a few, aren't we?
Yeah.
Oh, also let us know, our 4th birthday is coming up at the end of October. We want to do a special podcast for it.
Yeah.
So who shall we do? We were thinking about doing the Golden State Killer as a 3-part for Christmas. Mm-hmm. So don't recommend that one because I think that's what we've got earmarked for there. But it's our birthday, so who's one that we should really get stuck into and do? Yeah,
give us that. Also, I mean, I love you all, and I love you all for listening.
I mean, it doesn't sound like the next.
No, this is true. I just feel some people have forgotten that we do serial killers.
Oh yeah, do you know what it is? Is because loads of people are like, can you look into this murder? I'm like, no, because I'm not a policeman. I think it is loads of people who listen to us listen to loads of other
that's a fair point, yeah.
True crime podcasts, so they forget who does what.
Yeah, that's fair.
And our shtick is serial killers, isn't
3 and above, occasionally.
With a cooling off period in between.
With a cooling off period.
But although we've had the odd spree, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. We'll have the odd spree. And occasionally we will, go into other areas, like we're doing John Benet Ramsey.
That's a live show.
A live show.
Won't record that. Because I don't want to get sued.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening. And yeah, if you've got time... Oh, I just burnt myself on the radiator. Time! Hit a note there, burning myself on the radiator.
That was a fair burn, that.
That's how you want to leave the show? No. Well, yeah, so if you can come to us in America, amazing. And if you've got time to leave us a review, that's freaking great.
And if you don't like it, just why are you still listening? This is an hour out of your life.
They're not still listening, they've gone. Thank you very much, though, to everyone else. And we will see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.